Jubilee, pro-choice versus pro-life. Can they see eye to eye? This should be interesting. Let's first of all check out the. Let's see, Natalie, Kimberly. Now, as usual, I haven't watched this. Let's see. We've got 4 people, which means that they have 6 people in the group. 4 of which have media presences of 11,000 followers. Looks poet, teaching artist, facilitator, mental health advocate, activist, lover. Okay. Pronouns in bio, so probably at least somewhat liberal. 470 followers with no other. Okay. Okay. Black Lives Matter, food not rent, cancel rent. This is definitely a lefty. So I'm guessing they're going to be on the pro-choice side. And 2,000 followers. Yeah. This is almost certainly going to be a pro-lifer. So, at least the links they have here, we have one, was that medium size? 1,000 followers, yeah. But let's get into it. So, Jubilee. What do you mean by two-sided person, U.S. fighter? No, I'm not sure what you're talking about, what happened to Biden. But, Jubilee, take it away.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for another Middle Ground episode.
Be sure to stick around after the episode because we're going to talk about how we make middle ground and also what we've learned from them. Enjoy.
In all our conversations so far, nobody has brought up the rights of the fetus person. Doesn't she have the right, the choice to live?
But with that being said, that's a cluster of cells that could not, a lot of the time, exist outside of a woman's womb.
So yeah, this is a pretty common pro-life argument. What about the rights of the fetus? And I have no problem granting rights to a fetus. However, I have an issue with saying those rights supersede the rights of the mother. Yeah, we refer to those people as enlightened centrist U.S. fighter, and depending on their exact prescriptions, they tend to not be super helpful. I take information from all sides, but I recognize that when I'm looking at a conservative news source, it's through a conservative lens, and when I'm looking at a liberal or left-leaning news source, it's through that lens. And I interpret the information accordingly, understanding that conservatives aren't super interested in expanding human rights and people's access to the things that make life worth living, and that liberals and left-leaning people are interested in that. So you're not unique in getting news from all sides. It's just how you interpret that information. Together to spark a dialogue about their differences and similarities.
Hi, my name is Jolene. I am a college student and I'm pro-life.
Hello everyone, my name is Timmery and I'm pro-life and I talk about these issues on my radio show Trending with Timmery.
I'm Jay.
Okay, so we got someone who has the fact that you described it as a radio show indicates that it's most likely an actual radio show, like on the actual radio and not just a podcast. I know sometimes people on podcasts refer to themselves like on the radio or something like that, somewhat facetiously. But yeah, so we've got someone with media training here on the pro-life side. That's fun.
I'm a YouTuber called Pastor Jason Answers. So yes, I'm a Christian pastor.
My name's
Okay, interesting they didn't link him. Let me... Okay. So, just shy of 8,000 sub YouTube channel. Okay. Holy shit. I hate this guy already. He drives for Uber and tries to convert people. That's just kind of gross. But, so we've got two people on the pro-life side who are, have some media training or experience expressing themselves, probably particularly on this issue.
Liz, I work in tech and I am pro-choice.
My name is Kimberly. I am a college student and I am pro-choice.
Hey guys, I'm Natalie. I'm a poet, teaching artist, and mental health advocate, and I am pro-choice.
I know someone who's had an abortion.
I guess I'll go first. I have had two myself. The first one I was in.
Well, the top video there was Uber conversion. So he's trying to bring people to ostensibly Christianity. And, I mean, I understand that the Christian doctrine is to be a converter and proselytize as much as you can. But I don't know anyone who gets in an Uber and wants to get into a religious conversation. That just seems like, because the issue is that when you're in that Uber, you're functionally trapped there. So you are trapped in this conversation. It's just really shitty of him to do that, in my opinion.
Not emotionally stable. I was not financially stable. I was about to get evicted from where I was living. My family wouldn't, the list goes on and on. I was on drugs. It wasn't something that I would be able to do nor I wanted to do. And recently I had a miscarriage in which, because it was incomplete, I had to go in for AADNC, which is instant abortion procedure. And at this point in my life, I want to have kids. And so, that experience as well was something that was equally as difficult for me as the first one that I had.
This is one of the great things that I love about conservatives when they talk about being pro-life and whatnot, is that they talk about how one of the greatest indicators of success in life is waiting to have kids and waiting until you're married and blah, blah, blah. Which, okay, that's true. If you wait to have children until you're financially stable and secure, you're going to have a more, quote-unquote, successful life, according to their metrics, than someone who has kids at 16, 18, whatever, when they're, or any age when they're not financially stable. So that is why we want to make these options available for people who get pregnant when they're not available. Also why we want to make birth control, as in the pill or other methods, more readily available to people. Because people are going to have sex. Like, we can do... The data shows that abstinence-only education and telling people to just wait doesn't fucking work. People, especially once they've done it once, realize, hey, that feels really fucking good. I have a friend who says that you spend 9 months inside a woman and spend the rest of your life trying to get it back inside one, which true for some people I know. So by making birth control, primarily birth control is the thing. If you make birth control more readily available, if you make it so that anyone who wants to get on a pill or get an implant or any other kind of method of birth control that you prefer, that is not abstinence only, if you make that readily available to everyone, then it reduces the need for abortion, lets people plan their lives out and make decisions so that they can live their lives how they want to without having to deal with the possibility of a child coming along that may mess that up. So this is why liberals and lefties argue for increased access to birth control because it leads to better outcomes. And like she said, she wants children. Cool, good for her. I support her in that. But she was not in a position to have children. She became pregnant, so she ended it. She did what I think most people who are rational would consider the responsible thing, and didn't bring a life she wasn't prepared to take care of into the world, and didn't stress our already incredibly overstressed, didn't further stress our overstressed adoption system and foster care system, and brought, did the responsible thing so that she could get into a position where she can have children responsibly later in life. Access to birth control would have prevented that abortion in the first place.
Had to go through voluntarily.
I'm so sorry I went through that experience.
The church supports WPCC, which is an organization that helps women during pregnancy, after pregnancy, and post-abortion counseling. More than the people that I met there, my mom almost had an abortion because of me. She doesn't tell me the whole story because she doesn't like to talk about it, but her life was in danger and everybody was saying, just abort the baby, which is totally legitimate if the woman's life is in danger, I believe. But I'm actually glad that she didn't abort me, but had the baby anyway.
I'm surprised that he has. I mean, good for him. I'm not like talking shit here. I'm surprised he has that. There are a number of people I've seen on the pro-life side who are like, that child is sacred, and I mean, as shitty as it sounds, yeah, you should carry it to term, even if it has the potentiality to kill you. But good for him for having the rational view there. Hey, Magmil, how's it going, man?
I was 18 when I got my first abortion. And at that time, I was living with my grandmother. They were very conservative, raised as Catholic Christians. They would probably kick me out of the house if they were to find out I was pregnant. I was still, fresh out of high school, did not have, the monetary needs to raise a child and no place to live, so, yeah.
I have had both friends and extended family members who have had abortions, and I'm sure the two of you can speak to this. It's a decision that you carry with you the rest of your life, and I have seen people 2 years later, and I have seen people 30 years later still struggling with the aftermath of abortion, and that's why I think us women deserve so much more than abortion.
I agree. I think that, as I've already said, we should have birth control and proper physiological education available to everyone from a young age. Kids are having sex younger and younger these days, and I think that we should not treat sex, and this is coming from an American perspective, so I'm not sure what it's like in other nations that are not quite so puritanical. But in America, we pretend like sex is this filthy, disgusting thing, and if it's done right, it definitely is, that kids can be scarred and ruined for life by learning about, which causes them to have some very bad ideas about what sex is and what sex can be. So I definitely think that, and the data backs me up, that if we taught this at a younger age, if we instructed kids in the true safety, how to behave responsibly with your body, we would have less abortions. We would have fewer abortions, because if you behave responsibly even when you're engaging in sexual activity, then you're less likely to have something you don't want. Simple as that.
I know several people who have been like...
it depends on what you mean by wrong, U.S. fighter. I think abortion is a choice that should be available to anyone who wants one for any reason. So I guess, no, I don't think it's wrong. I would disagree with someone who uses abortion as birth control, like they get pregnant, have an abortion, get pregnant, have an abortion, get pregnant, have an abortion, without seeking out some other form of birth control. I think that is irresponsible and something that should be what's the word I'm looking for? Disincentivized. But I think that abortions should be available to anyone for just about any reason.
On the line, like wanting to, but I don't know anyone who actually went through with that process. I have 2 little brothers, and when my mom was pregnant with the youngest one, he was not planned, and he was, I mean, I guess you could say at that time he was an unwanted child. Throughout her pregnancy, she just was thinking of how much of a burden this could be. If my mom did not believe that life begins at conception, then she probably would have gotten an abortion. But my baby brother, well, now he's a little older, he has impacted every single one of our lives.
I thought, I could be wrong about this, but I thought that there was some data to indicate that there is some physiological trauma from abortions. If there's not, then I'm wrong there. But I thought I'd read somewhere. I could be wrong about that, but like I said, I think anyone should be able to get an abortion if they feel they need to. Okay. Okay.
In such a positive way that I just could not imagine him not being on this planet. And it really made me think that when life is born, like life is beautiful, and life is so much more beautiful than there not being any life at all.
I think that's sometimes true. There's so many other factors. People who don't have all of those things,
Right.
who don't have a family, who don't maybe have a partner, who don't.
Well, yeah. But I'm talking about, I mean, right now there is a significant amount of trauma due to societal pressure if you have, depending on where you live, if you get an abortion. So I would seek to prevent that kind of trauma. And if it's wholly societal, then we can change that. And yeah, it can be, then my whole argument about using it as birth control is out the window. But if there is physiological trauma, like actual physiological trauma for aborting a child that the mother goes through, then that's why I feel that behavior should be disincentivized. But if it's purely societal, then we just need to change society. Simple as that.
Don't have stable housing. Is that going to be the right circumstance for that child? Is that going to be more damaging? Thinking about the quality of the life that you can provide because you are the caretaker of that being. And if you are not in a position to do that, that is the same as child abuse to me.
And as sad as that is.
True. Yes. Forcing, this has been the argument for years and years and years. Pro-life people aren't pro-life, they're pro-birth. Because oftentimes the same people arguing, now I'm not saying anything about these people's arguments. I don't know their politics beyond the fact that they're pro-life. I don't know anything about them other than this guy is a Christian or Uber driver who tries to convert his passengers. And this is a radio show host, so, I would assume, at least for these two, that they are probably on the same page, but many conservatives who are pro-life don't want to make raising the child any easier. They don't want to give access to aid, to God, the word is like welfare, so that they can raise a happy, healthy child. They just want to make sure that child is born. George Carlin had a skit about this. They don't care. They care the child is born, and then they don't care about him until he's 18 and he can join the army to go get oil from the Middle East. So that's my other major issue with pro-life people, is that they talk about the sanctity of life, but then they don't do anything to make sure that that life is a good, healthy one. Using religious culture and abuses of people and make choices for their own bodies that the community insists must be life-changing. Okay, yeah, that's true.
That's something we can't ignore. I still believe that that is a life, and it is just as valuable as someone who may be growing up in a rich family and have everything and have all these resources. I believe both those lives are equally valuable.
See, I was just going to say, under what you're saying, it sounds like quality of life is what determines whether or not someone should live. And in that case, it's the poor people who are preyed upon to have abortions, and it's the poor people who then spend years struggling with post-abortion syndrome as well.
And so what, with
Holy shit. Yes. Poor people are incentivized to have abortions because they can't afford to have kids because there's no support for them thanks to austerity measures and conservatives continually cutting so-called entitlements and welfare. But they have trauma because society tells them they are terrible people for having an abortion. Like I said, I don't know if there is physiological trauma from having an abortion, but in our current society, the majority of the trauma comes from society itself. So, when you have an abortion, you are told you are, whether it's by friends, family members, TV shows, movies, people on the internet, Twitter, Facebook, what have you, you are basically told if you have an abortion, you are a bad person and a bad mother and all these things that struggle with. And like she said, 30 years later, they still struggle with the she didn't say regret, but the trauma of that abortion. And I'm just like, yeah, because they probably live in a friend and family group who will definitely at the time and maybe continuously subtly judge them for having an abortion.
cutting off access to abortion, what solution is that going to provide to those low-income individuals, people who may not be able to have access?
Also, it's not something they've brought up here, but I'm guessing they'll get into it. When you make abortions illegal, you don't stop abortions, you stop safe abortions. So there will still be abortions in places where they are not legal, but they won't be safe and they're more likely to cause the mother to die. This has been borne out in data every single time. There have been places that had no legal abortion, and there were more lethal abortions and more abortions, period, than they legalized abortions, and the total number of abortions went down. And moreover, the mother survived more often. So if we're pro-life, if we believe in the sanctity of life, we should do the thing which causes fewer people to die. Whether those people are adult women, or not so adult women in some cases, or fetuses in the womb.
Access to health care.
There are crisis pregnancy centers across the nation waiting with the financial means to help women who are facing crisis pregnancy. The reality is when people choose to have their children and they ask for help, let's say family cuts them off, there are other people willing to give help if we ask.
Have you had to
Those resources are stretched incredibly thin and are not able to help everyone to the point that that everyone who is in what she refers to as a crisis pregnancy is able to live a dignified life. Now, that's not to say that the resources don't exist to give everyone a dignified life. They definitely fucking do. It's a distribution problem.
Receive these kind of benefits before?
No, but I've worked with hundreds upon hundreds of women who have.
So based on my own experience, I'm someone who previously, granted, I don't have children, but I had previously had to be on food stamps. I previously have received unemployment benefits. Pretty much anything that you can name. There was a point in my life where I had to be able to get that kind of assistance. And it's not as much money as you think. And a lot of these individuals are still struggling to be able to provide for not only their baby, but themselves. And I think it's really unfair to...
Licking Gilf Sphincter, thanks for the follow, I think.
Put a woman and, this now baby in that situation against their own, against their own will.
Men should not be a part of the conversation.
Ooh, this is an interesting question. To be perfectly honest, I think this depends on their position in their relationship with the mother. So if they are still in a relationship, whether it's an official one, i.e. marriage, or just an unofficial, partner type relationship, I think then they should definitely have a say, as they would in any healthy relationship. But if it's a hit it or quit it, one night stand type situation, nah. Now I do think that that the mother should reach out to the father and ask if he wants to be a father, if he's willing to take custody, if the alternative is abortion, because I do believe that we don't. Overpopulation is a bad meme. We are not overpopulated. It's a distribution problem, as I've said. So if a father wants to be a father and is willing and able to take custody of the child, then sure, that should be a part of the conversation. However, this is in reference to a number of MRAs who have said that by women having an abortion, that aborting a child they're not ready to be a parent to, they are they're taking away the father's rights, and someone who wanted to be a father is unable to. And I say that again, if you're not in an actual romantic, whether it's an official relationship or not, I'm not saying you got to be married to be part of the conversation, but if you are, if it's an ex, if it was a one night stand or whatever, then you should only be part of the conversation if you're willing to take over parenthood duties. That's how I feel. Yeah, I agree with that, Magmill. Oh, good thing I don't want to have kids, licking Gilf Sphincter. So, cool. But yeah, I agree, Magmill. Men should probably not be involved at the level of legislation and medical policy.
It's not a part of a man's body. It's not a life that they are personally bringing into the world. And I don't think that they should be the end-all be-all to make that choice.
Why do you think it's a good thing I don't want to have kids? I'm real curious about that now.
Well, I'm the only guy here, and sometimes, even before I speak a word, I feel judged that you have no say because it's not your body. But I have two beautiful kids. What if my wife didn't want kids? What if she had an abortion without my say, without my advice? Doesn't this affect my life too, a lot?
This is what I was talking about. If you're married and the woman is pregnant and she decides to have an abortion without discussing with her husband, that's indicative of other issues in the fucking marriage. Whereas if you're not married and you're not in a relationship with the father of the child, then they should not get a say in whether you abort or not, again, unless they want to take over fatherhood duties. But he's presenting that like his wife would have done that, to which I say again, there are issues in the relationship if that's what happens. And yeah, just because I may be a loser with no job right now, thanks, Magmel, which you don't even know, that doesn't mean I'll always be a loser with no job. Things can change, but I doubt my desire to have children will change.
I actually think everyone has to be a part of every conversation. Now, I don't think men should be the dominant voice in the conversation at all, but I do think that everybody has to work together to create solutions to really large issues. And so, yeah, I think men absolutely have to be a part of it, but not the dominant voice.
The reality is it takes two to tango, right? I think we can all agree on that. And the chromosomes come from both the mother and the father. That baby is a part of the father as well.
I mean, I guess I didn't necessarily want to say that men absolutely shouldn't be a part of the conversation. Where I see it is a lot of the individuals who are trying to make these laws right now are men. While I think that there still needs to be a conversation between a couple, I don't think that it's fair for anybody other than the woman having to go through this to make that final decision on what she wants to do with her body.
As a guy, I feel like my statements are more opinions or suggestions, that it doesn't really matter. Thank you for your input, but we really need to make the decision based on what the woman feels. And I feel like I'm more of a second-rate citizen compared to the woman who has to make the real decision.
Yeah, I mean, I find that that's like the one place men feel that way versus women. There's very many instances in our lives where we don't get the first say, and we don't get the last say either. We're asking people permission to do things with ourselves. And I think for me, that's what's really problematic. When it wasn't legal, people still got abortions and they just died in alleys. And so is that what
True. Yeah, that's an unfortunate part of it. When it was illegal, yeah, like I already said.
Okay with as a society because people don't have access and don't have choices. I'm not okay with that.
I feel
Yeah, true, Magmill. Imagine the male outrage on that. That's like, especially when, what was it, Alabama made abortions illegal. A couple other states, there was a bunch of discussions about what if an all-female panel, all-woman panel decided to make vasectomies mandatory without any input from men. That would be basically the same thing. Or made vasectomies illegal and hard to get, like how hard it is to get a tubal ligation for a woman.
as if my rights are in danger.
I missed the question, I'm sorry.
I feel as if my rights are in danger.
Oh boy, yeah. Not surprised to see all three of the pro-choice
So these laws
people.
are allowing for non-medical physicians to perform abortions and operate without a medical license. So my right to good quality health care is being diminished, but also my right as, one day wanting to be a parent, parental notification, those laws are being swept away. And so parents who love their children more than the facility workers, or at least should, right? They should be able to talk to their child before they.
So the problem with this whole argument here is that it ignores the fact that there are parents who care more about having grandchildren or having status or appearing to be good Christians or any other number of issues that will prevent them from giving their children the care they need, and thus would prevent their children from having an abortion, which will let their child grow into the full the fullness of their being, or whatever euphemism you want to use, will prevent them from being all that they could be, so to speak, because they have to do whatever they can to take care of the children. So while I understand and even empathize with her argument here, I think that it is ultimately up to the individual to decide what to do with their body, and it's up to them to know how their parents would react, and up to them to inform the parents. And I say this even for like 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds who are still technically minors, but sorry, there's a lot of shitty parents out there. And I think that girls who maybe make a mistake should have the decision of whether to share that mistake with their parents.
Make such a serious decision, and the parents' rights are going away.
But at the end of the day, that's not their choice to make. That's not their body. And so I get where you.
This chick is based as fuck. Is this? Yeah. Yeah, this is the lefty Instagram. Yeah, she's based as fuck.
You're coming from like an emotional standpoint, but I believe that an abortion is a medical procedure, and I don't think that anybody else should really be involved other than the person that's having it.
For me, I want women to have the right to make a choice. And there are states that are saying, we will make the choice for you. And that's problematic to me on an equitable level. Attaching jail time and all these things for women, I don't see the same thing happening for men.
It's not the women who would be going to jail, it's people who are providing abortions that would be facing criminal charges.
That's not true. What was it? Was it Alabama? Let's see. Your total balance of illegal. Let's see. I'm pretty sure. Any stage of pregnancy, lethal anomaly, because it feels to be stillborn or die shortly following birth. Because the pregnancy will present serious health risks to the woman. For the pregnant woman diagnosed with a serious mental illness, might others taken action lead to her own death. Attempted performing. Okay, so Alabama. There was one of them. There was one of the abortion bans. Was it Georgia? Yeah. I think it was Georgia. Penalty in prison for doctors with notices. This is not referring. Okay. I thought there was one that actually did have a penalty for I thought there was one that did have a penalty for if the woman like if you got an abortion yeah. I thought there was one of them that if you banned I thought there was one that if you got an abortion, you were responsible, and like the mother would be punished. Let me see. Okay, this. Oh, anyway. I know it was one of them. Maybe it was the Kentucky. Bans have been set in law primarily in the South and Midwest. It's to adopt other types of abortion restrictions. Okay. Abortion providers have admitting privileges. Yeah, that's. This is like what the bitch that Magmill hates vehemently was talking about. These abortion providers don't even have a medical license. Well, you generally speaking, from what I understand, having an abortion is not this massive medical procedure. In fact, if you it sounds really callous to put it this way. If you catch it early enough, it can just be a pill. So let's see. So, but this is one way of making it difficult to get an abortion without making it illegal, along with requiring clinics that provide abortions to adhere to hospital rules and guidelines, which require hallways wide enough for two gurneys to pass side by side, which is way bigger than you need in a health clinic like that. Let's see. Okay. After the 58 new enactment toward a new ban, almost some abortions, surgeon abortion ban is a distinct approach with strategy deployed by abortion opponents for decades, just to adopt less sweeping abortion restrictions with a cumulative impact of denying care to patients and forcing clinics to close. That led to passive laws were less likely to be challenged in court than outright bans. With a new wave of abortion bans, it made it clear that they are seeking to give the U.S. Supreme Court multiple opportunities to undermine or overturn. Total ban on abortion. Ban abortion with a fatal heartbeat, which could be interpreted as early as 6 weeks. Additional bans 3 other gestational litigation over each. Those are filed challenge legislation bans are not currently in effect, unless the Mississippi ban is upheld. And the method is standard care for surgical abortion after about 14 weeks. Enforcement of the Indiana ban has been blocked pending the outcome of litigation. And enact bans based on the reason. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to do some more research on that. But still, yeah.
So I understand the fear, and I think there's a lot of, could we agree there's a lot of media hype that's creating lack of communication and a lack of clarity in a lot of areas. And I, as a pro-lifer, do not believe that any woman seeking abortion should face criminal charges.
So heated in conversation too.
This is me chill.
Well, as an American, I highly value my rights and freedom to do what I want with my body and things like that. These days,
You're also a dude, so you don't have very many restrictions on what you can do with your body outside of like drugs and shit.
Been reconsidering my views on gun control because you know there's mass shootings and innocent people are dying. We have to do something about that. And if I have to step back and give up some rights to own certain guns,
Gun control is not the answer to mass shootings. Greater access to mental health care and addressing inequality and poverty are ways to address those, which will also improve many other aspects of life. You don't have to give up your guns. We just have to get the billionaires to give up some of their billions.
Consider it because innocent people are dying. And I see it as the same thing with abortion. And in all our conversations so far, nobody has brought up the rights of the fetus person. Doesn't she have the right, the choice to live?
But with that being said, that's a cluster of cells that could not, a lot of the time, exist outside of a woman's womb. I guess I'm just going to have to agree to disagree with you on that.
In an ideal world, totally. If there were resources and access and support like we wish there were, I would be like, totally, nobody should have abortions because we have a society that supports people. But we actually don't live in a society where that's true for everyone, and so that's the issue for me.
Let's try, right?
If you don't draw the line at conception, then where's the line? And when I hear people say, oh, like, you don't have the right to choose what to do with my body because it's my body, I feel like I do, because if you were to have a pet animal and it was in your backyard and you beat that thing to death, I feel like we all have moral judgment, and I would stand up for that. But it's not my animal and it's not my backyard, it's not my house. I still believe in my moral compass that I should have the right to speak up about it, because
Comparing beating a dog to death with aborting a child is gross to me in ways I'm finding difficult to articulate. Mostly because if you choose to beat a dog to death, or any animal, a squirrel, a raccoon, whatever, that is a choice you have made to attack an independent living creature. As Liz pointed out, the based Instagrammer, the vast majority of time when someone wants to have an abortion, it's when the child, the fetus, the zygote, for some of these instances, is a clump of cells that is incapable of having of surviving. It's non-viable outside of the womb. You can't even transfer it to like an incubator or something. It is completely non-viable. And this is where we get into the yeah, I agree, Magmill. This is where we get into what's referred to as the violinist argument. If you believe that a woman who gets pregnant should be required to carry that baby to term regardless of her opinions, her feelings on the matter, unless it threatens her life, then you should be okay to be hooked up to another person who needs your kidneys to survive, so that you can effectively function as a living dialysis machine while they wait for a kidney replacement, or for the rest of their life, if that is what is necessary. And I don't know anyone who would agree to that, because that is absurd, but that is functionally the same argument as no matter what a woman's choice is, she should be required to carry a child to term.
genuinely believe that that is wrong. Abortion is killing human life, and so that is why I feel that I have the right to say something about it.
The responsibility of pregnancy prevention is currently equal between men.
Whew. The responsibility of pregnancy prevention is currently equal between men and women. I feel like this depends on what perspective you're taking. Is it capabilities? Because there are a number of methods, both one-time use and long-term use, that women can use. There are fewer methods other than like a condom. I don't know that men have the same kind of like long-term birth control implant that women can get. But there are a number of so I would say there's approximate equal capabilities between the genders. That being said, there's a lot more emphasis in society put on depending on where the people you're around, either on men wrapping it up or on women being on birth control of their own. And so I don't know. This is a really, really nuanced question. It depends on a lot of things. Because I know that there's a lot of societal pressure on women to be on birth control, get an implant, be on the pill, get a diaphragm, all these things, so that men don't have to have that responsibility. But I've also seen a lot of people talk about men taking the responsibility of, if you don't want kids, wrap it up, get a condom, wear it, use a new condom every time. So that this is a really tough question, I think.
Men and women.
Other than in cases of rape or incest, I believe that pregnancy prevention is equal because we enter into sexual intimacy both willingly.
Yeah, I agree with that. It takes two people to make those choices, whether it's abstinence, whether it's using contraceptives.
Consent is what I think where prevention starts.
Okay, I'll admit it. As a guy, it is easier for us. I mean, even if there is a birth control pill, culturally today, we're not taking that. We're not gonna snip, and it's easier, sorry.
No, I agree. They always push it towards women if you don't want to get pregnant. Yes, there are condoms out there for men to prevent pregnancy. However, it's not, nobody wears it. Yeah, that's true.
In my
Like,
experience.
I won't say nobody.
Yeah.
Some people. Yeah. Right.
In my
Imagine being so wealthy you don't reuse your condoms. Gosh.
experience, men don't want to.
Right.
And they've also tried to come up with, various different birth control methods for men.
No way.
No, and that's the overwhelming response. There's so many side effects. There's the possibility of this and that. And, I've had a friend that had a stroke because of her birth control. And I think that it's really unfair that that responsibility is solely being placed on women.
Well, and also if it's gonna be solely on me to prevent, then it is solely on me to make a choice thereafter.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying, but these conversations need to be said before any action is done for both people to understand that.
True. Yes. Like, this is one of those things that has popped up really in like the last 10 years or so, I feel. Because it was definitely not, like, there was the start of it when I was in college and whatnot. This idea that even if it's a one-night stand, if it's a random, random person you picked up at the bar or whatever, you should have these conversations about, hey, are you on the pill? Do you have an implant or whatever? These kind of conversations are being pushed as something that people should have. And let me be clear, I think that's a good thing. I think that is unequivocally a good thing that these conversations are being pushed and normalized, because I think that it is part of being a responsible adult is having these kind of conversations along with continuous enthusiastic consent. That being said, there is still a sizable contingent of people, particularly like about my age and older, who think that, particularly for one-night stands, it's up to the woman to make sure that she's not going to get pregnant, or to have condoms for a man to use if she doesn't want to get pregnant, which is gross and incredibly unfair. Which is part of why I had such trouble deciding how I would answer this question, because there are options for both sides, and there is greater societal pressure depending on your friend group and your background as to whether you would whether it's the man's responsibility to wrap it up or the woman's responsibility to make sure that she's on birth control, or to have condoms for the man to use. And I think that is a cultural difference depending on your background. But I think that it is shifting to the point where, Zoomers today are totally okay with having that conversation before the things get heavy in most cases. From what memes and stuff I've seen. Obviously, I've never hooked up with a Zoomer. Most of them are, all Zoomers are too young for me, even if they're technically over the age of consent. So, I do think that is a positive change, but it's a recent change and it's a slow change. Yeah, exactly.
That they are both responsible for this.
I agree with you. And one of the things that I always think about in the conversation of abortion is education, right? And the education around our bodies, or just consent, right? Or just rape. All of these things are not conversations that are widely happening. I think about my own experience of sex ed in high school was taught by the gym teacher who was also teaching us driver's training.
Little
right?
funding there.
And so I think about what was the quality of the educational experience I got. And typically in my partnerships, I am the first person that my partner has encountered that is willing and able to have a conversation about sex, about birth control, about all of these things. So it's interesting that we're like, we should be having these conversations, but people don't have the emotional intelligence to be having these conversations or the emotional maturity, which is unfortunate, but it's the reality, right? And so it does leave the onus on the person who is gonna be most impacted, which in this case would be women.
That's interesting. You brought up sex education. That made me think back to my sex education. Now I graduated in 2005, so I had sex education in 6th grade, which would have been 99-ish, 98, 99, which would have been at the height of the abstinence-only education. But I didn't get abstinence-only education. I was told that condoms are, at least for the prevention of pregnancy, the 95, 97% figure, whatever the number was at the time, that spermicidal lubricants, or spermicide, increases that number, that if they're on the pill, it increases the number, and so we were definitely told that the only 100% foolproof way is abstinence, but other methods to use if you do want to do it, which is interesting because I went to school in Iowa, and we're not exactly known as a progressive capital or anything, but back in the turn of the century, the late 20th century, apparently, at least in the school I went to, we had some decent evidence-based education, at least on that. Now there definitely was some what we would now refer to as slut shaming, with this idea that no one wants to get with someone who's been with a bunch of partners or anything like that, and that kind of rhetoric. But there was not the abstinence-only education, and that many other people talk about from that time period. So it's always weird when I've gone back and looked into history and been like, there was this rash of abstinence-only education and it doesn't work. And it's like, well, that's not the kind of sex ed I had. Not trying to discount those that attitude, but that's not trying to discount that data that there was a lot of abstinence-only education. Just wasn't my experience.
Someone from the other side sincerely tried to empathize with you.
Yeah.
This is an interesting question because normally their questions are about the situation as a whole. This seems to be more about this specific interaction, which I mean I don't mind. I think it's a good way of kind of putting a cap on it, because the whole point of these middle ground Jubilee videos is to show that people with different views on an issue, from opposite sides of an issue, can come together and agree on some things and disagree on others, and there's common ground or whatever. Although I don't think there's actually much common ground between most pro-lifers and most pro-choicers, particularly this group here.
You, Timmery, have empathized with me the most. Thank you for just understanding me and then just, throwing your insight out there.
Yeah, Natalie, I really appreciated how you were able to understand each different situation and circumstance and be able to agree to disagree with everything that's being said.
I think that this is how real conversations usually occur, and it shows people that we don't have to avoid a topic. And so
True. Yes. That is one thing I will say, is that one of the frustrations a lot of people bring up about these is that they don't come to a conclusion. They don't, nobody changes their mind. And it's like, yeah, rarely, especially in as polarizing a topics as things like Black Lives Matter or, the abortion debate, are minds changed in a single conversation like this. But who knows? Maybe one of the pro-choice people planted a seed in one of these pro-life people's mind, and it'll, grow and gnaw at them, and they'll look into it later, and they'll think about it, and it'll grow, and they'll think about it, and maybe eventually they'll change their mind and realize that, hey, I was wrong. Women should have this choice. And that's... you're never going to have that kind of argument there. This is something the internet has done, as it's created these spaces where people can only they only want to dunk on people and want to win the argument. And I do think that, despite the fact that Jubilee tends to stack the deck on one side or the other, typically on the conservative side, for these discussions, these middle grounds, they are good about, at least in the edited version, showing people who are showing real people having a conversation about these issues.
So thanks for listening and thanks for sharing. And I have to tell the two of you, I'm sorry.
I doubt she's going to change her mind, but I'm specifically thinking about the other woman over here. I agree. I don't think this woman or the dude are going to change their minds.
On behalf of any person who's pro-life, who has ever made you feel criminalized for having had an abortion, and I do not believe that anyone should face jail time for having had an abortion. I understand your circumstances, and I want you to know that. The dude.
To be fair, even on the pro-choice side, they're not going to empathize with the dude who is basically saying that women should not have the choice to have an abortion. Abortion shouldn't be available. He even said he didn't really expect to, get much talk here. I do wonder why they went with him instead of another woman for the pro-life side, because there can't be any shortage of pro-life women willing to come on Jubilee.
I feel bad. I feel like I picked on you too.
Guess I was the odd man out. But I believe in women's rights, equal pay for equal work. There should be more representation in government. My big thing is that the fetus is not just a blob of tissue. It's a real person, a him or a her. And maybe I didn't get that across for you to grasp that on my perspective.
I hope that it didn't come across that we are not empathetic, because I know for sure I was really trying to listen to you and trying to find a commonality. I was actually like, oh, interesting. Okay, you think this and what and why? I think those things are super valuable, to not have the same perspective, but still be able to find spaces to align, because that's where the real work is, not us all agreeing.
Right.
But still, there are some basic things we want for humans and women. And so if that's true, then we all have to do some sort of work and some sort of bending in places to make that be true.
Well, that was fun. So yeah, in response to him talking about how the fetus is him or her, sure, yeah, but that doesn't mean it has any greater rights than the mother itself. You know, that there's no reason why the child in their belly has more rights than the mother herself. That it really is, in my mind, as simple as that. I have no issue granting fetus personhood or anything like that. Partially because that just short circuits most of their arguments. Because I don't believe that fetus, that person in their belly has, in their womb, has more rights, more right to life, more right to bodily autonomy and integrity than the mother. So that's my saying on it. And this was probably one of the more boring Jubilees, to be perfectly honest. Simply because there was not a lot of hyper disagreement. There was a lot more empathy here, which is good. I don't want to say that more empathy is a bad thing. It's bad for internet blood sports and somewhat exciting content. But I'm glad that this was somewhat more empathetic, more fun. All right, Magnum, take it easy, man. Hey, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. Remember to like, share, and leave a comment because it helps me. Subscribe and ring that bell to help you. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.